Let's get started. QR codes had been around for quite a while, but their use really took off in the last 3 or 4 years, mostly because cameras on Android and iOS phones automatically detect them. And that makes it so much easier for us to use them in presentations, either at conferences or even in class presentations, especially if you're teaching larger classes. They've been around since 1994. They were first used by a Japanese company to label auto parts so they could scan in do inventories quickly. It's expanded quite a bit since then. And they were starting to fade out for a while. For a while, you could see them all sorts of walls and images with descriptions of content. But they really made a large resurgence, again, once they were built into the camera app in iPhones and Androids. Some common educational uses of this is to share presentations or course resources. When I give a presentation, especially at larger conferences where there might be a lot of people, having a QR code in your presentation slides lets you easily share that with people. You could also share some additional supplemental resources with people using QR codes. And I'll go through both of those as we move through. And I'll try, I think I set it up, so I'm actually practicing that in this. But in terms of other uses, if you're doing a conference presentation and you want to make it a little more interactive, you could use polling software. There's lots of free software out there. Here on campus, you could set up a poll using Google Drive, using Google Forms, or you could use iClicker, although you wouldn't need a link for that because students would already have that. But again, for conference presentations, it's a really nice way of getting some quick feedback from people on their level of expertise or knowledge, so you can help shape what they're going to be doing. When I gave a presentation last week at CIT, we had a very large presentation that we had put together for another conference, and we had to cut it to about 1/3 of its size. And so we just had the participants do a poll of what areas they wanted to focus on right at the start of the presentation, so we could help shape the presentation there. You could do a quick quiz. You could use a quiz tool, basically a Google form with a quiz, for example. You could do a survey if you'd like, if you want to get some survey feedback. You could also share a spreadsheet if there's some results you want to share with either a conference audience or your class. You could share links to a video. A form I've already mentioned. You could also, for example, share a link to a software download. So for example, in one of my classes, I have students download some open source software. I just put the QR code up there and they can send it in and get a link directly to the download. Again, as I mentioned before, copies of slides. So basically, if you want to do this, these are the steps, and we can I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. But basically, if you're using Google Apps and you want to copy Google Slides, you could just click on the share button, set the status to be viewable by anyone with the link, copy the link, open another tab. This will make it just a little bit easier. And then now this next step is optional, but if you want people to download the slides and if you want them to be able to reuse them, you don't want to give them edit permissions to your slides. By default, you'd give view permissions. But if you think what you created is something people might want, that they may want to add to or modify or use in some way, what I normally do is I change at the end of the URL, that part that says edit and then USP equals sharing, delete that part and just replace it with the word copy. And then that link will create a copy link. So anyone who has that link will get a copy of whatever it is that you're sharing that will go into their own Google Drive, and then they can edit or do whatever they'd like with it, take notes on it, modify it, et cetera. Again, this fourth step is optional. And then once you have it, you can go to the URL bar and select the create QR code, then download it. Let me just, and then you just embed that in your slideshow, you put that up, and I think I actually have done that. So if we go right here, so here's an example, we'll go through the steps, but basically if you take a picture of that, you hold the camera up to that, it should automatically ask you to download a copy of the slides. For chat, I'm going to just grab the link itself. I'm going to copy the link and share it in the chat. And so if you have people on Zoom sitting at laptops, you probably, they probably wouldn't be able to scan the QR code, but if they have a mobile phone, they could do that. And if they have Google Drive on their phone, and most people, I think most academics and students probably do, if they don't, they probably should, you can download it directly to Google Drive and add it to your account. So, so this basically very simple set of slides contains instructions on how to, it's a slideshow on shared slideshow on how to share a slideshow. Almost every conference presentation that I've given in probably the last 4 or 5 years will have this option. But what we used to have to do is take the URL, go to some sort of QR code creation, but we don't need to do that anymore. Let me get rid of these controls here, and I'm going to exit from the presentation just to go through those steps. And basically, let me get rid of some of these extra tabs. I had to go through some steps to get logged into Zoom again, and that's not what I wanted. So here's a slideshow. So the steps basically, once you have your slides, is you click share, you'd go through, I already had done this, I'm so used to having 2 monitors. And then I set it to anyone with a link, copy that link, and then again, so you can easily modify it. You could do that in a text thing as well, but I'm going to paste it in here. And remember I said if you change this last part to copy, basically when people use this link, they'll get a message like this. It'll ask them if they want to make a copy, and then it will add it to their Google Drive. People have to trust you enough that you're actually sharing that and not sharing a virus, but usually with conference presentations, most people are pretty comfortable with that. You could just share the slides directly without doing that last step. But here's where things get really powerful. This is a fairly recent factor. I'm not sure how long it's been around, but if you go to the share this page, you notice it usually on my computer, it normally has a little square box with an arrow going up through it. Yours may be different. I think this is probably just an old version of Chrome. You've got this create QR code, which is I don't know how long it's been around. I've seen it for at least the last semester or 2. But if you choose that, it will directly create a QR code that you could then share in your slides with anyone. And then you download it and you just embed it in your presentation, or you have the file stored and you put it up on the screen and anyone can get access to the slides. So it's a really nice way of sharing any sort of information that you might want to share. As an example from the last somewhat bungled workshop, I had this document here, which apparently I just closed. Yeah, I did. But if I wanted to share a link to let's just say a website. Let's say we wanted to share a link to the Oswego website. All we would have to do if we wanted to make that downloadable, or if we want people to be able to get there quickly, create the QR code, either just leave it on the screen or download it. And again, when using Zoom, you'd want to put the URL in the chat, but if you just have people out there with smartphones, this is a quick and easy way of sharing any files. So this is a short presentation. That's pretty much all there is. But if you want to share resources with students or with an audience, it's a really good way of doing that. Because you can share anything that you could share in Google, you could share, but you could share any URL with people. So you could go to a YouTube video and create a QR code for that. Let's just do that just to show. If you wanted students or people in your audience to watch a YouTube video, I don't know what's going to pop up in here. But if we want to, Oh, this is actually my account, it looks like. So, so there's some Beatles stuff in there and some music. But basically, if I went to here, I guess I don't want to play that, but suppose I wanted to share that, I would just go to, well, I just go to this URL and choose share and create that QR code and then embed it in the presentation. So you could put links to any number of things and easily share them. And having that right in the URL, right in the URL bar in Chrome makes it so much easier, because what you used to have to do is grab the URL, find a free QR code creation app, put the URL in, and then download the image and do it. This just saves a couple of little steps. So that's pretty much it. And that's why the dinosaur is Google's. If you see the dinosaur, someone did it by creating that within Google. You know, before, if you wanted to share resources, you'd have to get people's email addresses and send it. Here, you just embed the QR code. In one presentation that we gave at CIT last week, I was working with Judy Littlejohn. I think we had 3 QR codes embedded for people to connect to different resources, and it worked pretty smoothly. Because again, all you need to do is hold your smartphone up to it and you have the link right there. A common use if you're using something like Mentimeter or one of the other presentation apps where people can connect to it through their own, through a URL, it's a good way of sharing the URL. And that way, you know, it will share your slides, but also embed some questions, polling, and displays in it, which is a nice way of easily getting to those types of tools. Any questions? Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording then, but try it. Again, all you have to do is go to the URL bar, click on whatever icon is up there that looks something like a sharing type of thing or an upload, and do this. And it's just so much easier than it used to be.